Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your professor for the evening, Mr. Justin. And we're going to try to redo what we did, and I'll be checking the chat this time in case my mic goes on the fritz. So let me know. Let me know if things go haywire with the audio. But I hope everyone's doing well. But we had a torrential downpour for a few hours in New York City. Like flooded streets in Manhattan. It was pretty intense. Doggos did not want to go outside today. Yes. Okay. So yeah, we're going to go back and redo what we did last night, which is totally fine because, hey, everything's prepared and ready to go. So yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Please go to the website, thedominance.academy.com. Check out what I've got going on there. And if you go to the top right of the website, you'll see a big button, and that's where you can schedule your free consultation with me. I'd like to hear from you, and I promise you it will be beneficial. And there's no cost, but about 45 minutes of your time. All right, so let's pull up that document. All right, so this is about the woman's mind moving before her body. And this was a lesson that I learned from my Sifu many years ago, when he told me that wherever the mind goes, the body follows. And this was in relation to combat. This was in relation to your moods, distractions, staying focused. And so it was a lesson in paying attention to where your mind goes, because it will show up in your body, along with any kind of states. So if you're having anxiety, that's going to show up physically. Sadness, happiness, anger, and it all creates different states in your body. So be mindful of where your mind goes, because this can also affect your health. You know, people, like, they have a lot of stress, they start developing ulcers and shit like that. So I tell my guys, at least when it comes to anxiety and stress, is that they should get used to the practice of sighing, the art of sighing. And it's I joke, but it's actually a really useful skill that I learned from my other great teacher. And whenever I saw him going into like a heavy sparring match or something like that, he was like shaking out his arms, and every single time he'd go, whew, and he kind of like make this weird like shake out movement with his hands. And I realized it was a great way to just take the edge off of your tension. And we do this naturally. You know, we naturally just sigh. We don't really think about it, but it becomes very effective if you do think about it, if you do make it a conscious choice to sigh. And just in the moment, it relieves your stress. So it's a very good practice they should keep in mind for all things moving forward. And that will keep your mind more relaxed, your body more relaxed. Because, like I said, wherever that mind goes, it'll show up in your body. Your body will follow those impulses. And just as yours do, so do hers. So as a dominant, this is really important to keep in mind, or as just her man, as her leader. you must pay attention. You must pay attention to her states. And I know a lot of guys, I've heard guys say, why should I have to manage, this woman's emotions? Why should I have to do that? Now she's grown, she's in her 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. And the thing is that unless like a lot of time goes by or they have particular types of training, that overwhelmness and the multi-mind and the scattered minds just doesn't go away. And so if you want smoothness in your relationship, you want smoothness for yourself, you want smoothness for her, then it's something you're going to have to pay attention to and guide from time to time. And you're either going to guide by harnessing her current state and either like settling it or redirecting it, or teaching her skills in how to do it herself. And I know as a teacher, students aren't always on top of the skills that you teach them. So you have to like remind them and kind of bring them into state. So, just understand that that's going to be part of your thing in a relationship as a leader. You're constantly going to be on. You don't have any off days. You maybe have like off moments, but there's no day within a relationship when you're just off, unless you create that for yourself. Okay. And then you're going to have to do pre-managing. So like, I would be like, hey, I need to just have some time by myself. So I'm going to get on my bike and I'm going to be away for the next 6 hours. And this is what you're going to do, right? So you give them assignments. I'm not sitting there like, what do I do? You know what I mean? Like give them assignments, keep them occupied, right? I expect to see this when I get back, or anything along those lines. If they're working on developing something, you say, hey, you need to practice your piano. You need to do this. You need to do this. And then make sure they're set. And you say, okay, they're occupied. I'm gone. Okay. And even then, I would say it would be a responsible thing to check in, to say, hey, I've stopped for fuel. I'm over here, that sort of thing. Because she will worry about you. Even if you're not doing something dangerous like riding a motorcycle, she will be wondering like where you're at. I see a message. Let me check that. Okay. Okay. I'm like paranoid now that my audio is going to go out. Like every message that pops up. Yeah. So you're always going to be in this position. So guys, you can't go thinking, okay, I'm going to do the work to get the young lady, and then we'll get into a relationship, and then I can put my feet up. Like I made it, right? I crossed the finish line. And it's like, no, you just stepped through a particular barrier. You crossed a certain threshold, and now you have a whole second journey ahead of you. And, that will go on for as long as the relationship lasts. And it's something that you really shouldn't take lightly. But unfortunately, a lot of guys do. They just come in and they put their feet up and they're like, okay, this is, I made it. I got the girl and now I can relax. It's like, no, you just started your job. If you create something that's fully committed, or you get married or something like that, that's the next stage. And then there's going to be stages within that, as you develop, and hopefully you have the mindset of creating more development, not just kind of sitting on your laurels and being like, all right, we're good. Because it's really important that you grow, and it's important that you urge your sub or your woman to grow through plans, through directives, through knowing goals and encouraging them to happen. Very, very important. So let's take a look at this this written piece of mine. It's called "Her Mind Bends Before Her Body." The body kneels by command. The mind kneels by recognition. Only when the second bows does the first find peace. Rites of the First Initiate, Chapter 7, Verse 3. Most men think power begins with control. It doesn't. It begins with gravity, the kind of presence that makes her pause before she speaks up, that makes her question what part of herself just woke up. You don't take her body, not first. You bend her mind, because until her mind yields, her body is just acting. But once her mind bends, everything follows. And this is contrary to what a lot of guys think, where they get into this belief where I need to get this woman into bed as fast as possible. And if she's not into it, then she's done. Okay. I take a different path, as you know, because how do I know that she's deserving of that so soon? Because I know that the experience is going to be impactful. I'm not there I don't look at it as something of me taking. And I think that might be the biggest difference, is that I don't look at it as something for me to consume. I look at it as an opportunity for them that they get to experience. And so I realized that this takes a certain amount of my time, my energy, my attention, my skill. And that's not something I'm just going to give away simply because I think she looks good and she's willing to have sex. No, she's going to wait until I decide that she's ready. It doesn't matter if I'm ready. My instinct is always going to be ready. That doesn't mean it should happen, simply because there's an impulse that says that it should happen. That doesn't make any sense, right? So that's how I think about it. Anything that I have is valuable, so why give it away for free? So onto the nature of her mind. Every woman carries two minds. The one she shows the world, logical, armored, responsible. The one that speaks in pulse and instinct. The second one is the one that yearns for surrender. It's the one that tests you, the one that measures your depth, your stability, your weight. And when she meets a man who carries true masculine authority, not aggression, not bravado, but grounded certainty, her mind starts to loosen its grip. Let me just turn this down just a little bit. I'm afraid this might be too loud for you guys. Because here's the secret. A woman does not surrender because she's weak. She surrenders because her strength finally feels safe. Her mind bends when it encounters something more immovable than itself, something that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't collapse when challenged, does not react. That's why dominance is never about domination. It's about containment, holding the chaos without trying to silence it. The body follows the commands of the psyche. If her mind doesn't trust you, her body will only mimic surrender. She'll arch, she'll moan, she'll perform, but she won't yield. And women know the difference. They feel it in the tension of their own muscles. Her submission starts when her nervous system decides that it can rest. When her body recognizes your presence as structure, not threat. That's the invisible hand behind attraction. When she feels your stillness, her chaos begins to relax. So the bending of her mind isn't manipulation. It's guidance. It's the natural order of polarity. Her surrender meeting your leadership in a balanced exchange of trust and tension. If you try to skip that, if you go straight for her body, you end up with resistance, confusion, or shallow compliance. And deep down, both of you feel it. The emptiness of play without gravity. And so, a lot of guys will see a girl doing certain things. They will maybe see a video, maybe a friend of theirs was doing something, and or they're watching porn and they'll see the things that the girls are doing and they say, she submitted to him. And she has, but only on a physical level, only through the body, which anyone can do, right? If she can choose to, then it can happen that way. But what I'm talking about, the type of surrender, it's something of an impulse. It's something that's instinctual. It's a reaction, almost like when you smell something delicious and your mouth starts to water. It's almost involuntary, that kind of submission. And this is the real deal. This is what you should be going for, what you should be seeking. But it's nothing you can actually make happen, because it's a reaction to how you show up. And if you show up with performance, she's going to find out at some point or another. She will discover that you're not actually a man, that you're a boy cosplaying as a man, that you're a man who doesn't know what he's doing, who's cosplaying as a dominant. She'll sniff it out eventually, whether it's hours, days, weeks, months, years. Eventually, the mask will fall off, and she's going to go, fuck, this guy just wasted my fucking time. He's been a chump this whole time. So let's look at that performer. That's the first obstacle. Young villain, the Socrates of sex. I like that. I like that. Thank you. So the first obstacle is the performer. Okay. The man trying to look dominant instead of being grounded. He imitates power through like a louder voice, a colder tone, more rules, but it's all scaffolding around insecurity. She feels that instantly. A woman's intuition is trained on survival. Her hindbrain, where those, the F's are, right? Feast, flee, fuck, fight, all that stuff. That's constantly running. It doesn't know that we're in 2025, almost 2026. It just knows about those impulses. And that's where she can sense, like from her gut, that you're not real, like you're a performer. And maybe she'll give you the time of day. Maybe she'll like have sex with you because, hey, like whatever, he's cute, right? Or like, whatever, he's got a nice apartment. And she might keep that going for a little while, but that it starts scratching at her. That voice inside of you, like, he's fake. He's putting on a performance. You need to leave. And eventually she does. So the second obstacle after the performer is need. When you need her to submit, you lose the throne before you've even sat in it. Your authority must exist independent of her response. If her disobedience shakes you, you've built your dominance on her validation, not your sovereignty. So this has to do with filling your own cup. This part has to do with dealing with your nice guy disorder. This has to do with the deeper things about how you relate with yourself that we talk about on this show. It's unavoidable. Like, if you actually want to lead, you have to attend to the bullshit of your identity, the things that have happened to you in your past that have shaped your current view of yourself, view of women, view of the world. Because if that's not on point and you're carrying poison with you, it will contaminate everything you do in your relationships. And this is why relationships blow up in guys' faces, or they crumble right in their hands. It's because they're carrying with them poison into the situation. And a lot of those guys, they'll either try to hide it, or then it explodes, or they turn her into his therapist / mommy to help him try to fix it, and, like hold him either literally or figuratively. And this is like a grown man, right? It's like, no, you need a coach and you need therapy to get through this stuff, because that's what will like kind of like wipe your slate as clean as you can, such that you can make room for leadership. And the third obstacle here is inconsistency. When she can't relax into a man whose power flickers. One day he's commanding, next day he's apologetic, one moment he's decisive, the next he's uncertain. You can't be like this. You can't be wishy-washy. You need to show up with the same mindset every single day, which is something that's dependable, that's reasonable, that doesn't bend to her shit, can see through her because you can see through yourself. It's all of those things. And this is what allows you to be consistent, is when you have that kind of trust and conviction in yourself. That's what happens here. So to lead her mind, you must become predictable in your depth, not rigid, but stable. She must feel that your boundaries are not a punishment, but the architecture of safety. So it's your stability that is consistent, not being rigid and, like a drill sergeant all the time. Like that's just going to squash things. And we don't want that, right? We want growth. We want forward movement. We want someone to feel, we want her to feel that she can be free with you. That's the idea. And you're not going to get that with rigidity. So the experience for her is when her mind bends, it's not about submission to you. It's not really you. It's about the freedom that she experiences within you. She starts to breathe differently. She stops rehearsing her words, like both verbally and in her head. The tension in her chest dissolves. She's not losing herself. She's shedding what was never hers. Her surrender becomes devotional. It's spiritual, not sexual, though it expresses through the body. She begins to crave your instruction because your leadership silences the noise of the world. In the presence of your calm dominance, her mind bends like metal under heat, slow, inevitable, and beautiful. And you'll see it in her eyes, that moment when defiance melts into trust. That's the point of no return, where her body stops asking permission to obey what her soul already decided. And this part in here about it being spiritual, not sexual, that being mental and not physical, that's really the crux of power dynamics. People think it's about sex and the body when it's really about the spirit and the mind. And I was explaining this to a young client of mine he's like a little bit reluctant about BDSM specifically. He likes the power dynamics aspect of it. He likes the leadership aspect of it. But because of his preconceived notions of it being so alternative way of living, such an alternative way of looking at things, that it was hard for him to get past his preconceived notions. And I had to explain to him that it's really about the power interplay between the dom and the sub. It's not about like really what you do. And the only thing is that the physical things just become an extension of what's already inside. Okay, so I explained to him, when the sub is in a position where she says, I relinquish myself to you. I offer myself to you. Your will is my will. And my will is your will. I am basically an extension of you. Her mind, her spirit is bound to you. Okay? In the same sense of being bound by something externally. So I talked to him about these restraint belts. You can buy them as a set. And it's basically like very simple belts that like you would put around your waist, but not as thick, with a smaller buckle. And the set comes in different lengths. So basically you could put a buckle on her if she's like standing with her feet together, her hands at her sides. You could put a whole series of belts around her from her neck down to her ankles, like binding everything together. And you could do this. And you say, okay, stand in the room, like you get naked, and you're going to bind her like this. You're going to blindfold her. And then you can just walk up to her and in her ear, remind her who she belongs to. Make her say it. Make her say, I belong to you, my lord. I belong to you, sir. Or this girl belongs to you, not even I. And that, to him, is like this theatrical stuff, but really it's just a physical representation. It's a physical symbol of what's already occurring internally. She feels bound to him. So when this occurs, like the physical binding, it's nothing of pressure. It's nothing of get me out of this. I'm struggling here. I'm panicking. It's a reminder physically of what's already occurring mentally and spiritually that she's already really consented to. She's already given herself over. So just keep in mind, like the things you see in BDSM really are just symbols. They're physical, visual symbols of things that are occurring on the intangible level. That's really what's happening. So let's talk about some techniques about, mind bending. Okay. So the how involved. This is not to be confused with manipulation. What this is conditioning, because the mind, all of our minds, learns through repetition, tone, and consequence, right? Cause and effect. And that effect could be positive or negative, because consequences are not necessarily negative, though we come to understand them as such. But consequences just means outcome. That's all it is. It's not necessarily a negative outcome. So your presence must be felt before you speak. So the first part is commanding your presence as part of the how. And it comes from your posture, your breath, your pace. Move slower than the room. Speak with pauses that make her lean forward. A dominant man does not fill silence. He owns it. So if you're out, say like on a date or something like that, and you're talking, one of the first things that I tell my guys, like if they're at the dating phase, they're not regularly seeing someone, I tell my guys not to ask questions. Ask no questions. Just make statements and make assumptions. And the assumptions kind of take place of the of the questions. So you could say, just, I don't know, you look like the kind of girl who, fill in the blank, enjoys I don't know, fucking Russian food, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe they're talking about like travel to, Eastern Europe or whatever. And you say, hey, you look like the kind of person who would enjoy Russian food. Instead of saying, do you like Russian food? Right? It's much better. It's stronger to step out and make assumptions like that. So don't ask questions. And there's always going to be natural pauses in conversation where the energy just kind of like takes a dip. And I encourage you to resist the impulse to fill that dip with words. Hold eye contact and relax. Don't like dart around, don't fidget, nothing. Which will show her, because what that is usually it causes a little bit of tension, a little bit of that social tension between people when you're talking and there's this natural lull in the conversation. People usually get uncomfortable with that. I'm encouraging you to get comfortable. And you want her to feel your comfort like you live there. That's the whole idea. Which brings us to the next one, which is eye contact. Use eye contact as a leash. Think of it that way. Think of your eye contact as a leash around her. And so you want to be steady with your leash. Don't let your eyes dart. Don't scan. Hold her eyes as if her attention is a pulse that you can feel. Let your gaze communicate direction. The longer you can stay unflinching, the more her mind adapts to your steadiness. And I was talking last night about the tension and holding tension. And you're just sitting there looking at her in the eyes. And what you can do is just reach out with your hand, palm up, not too high, not too low, just like a naturally low position, and hold out your hand. with the palm up, inviting her to take your hand. And because there's that tension from the lull, you being assertive, but in like a very relaxed sort of way, this will break that tension, but it will also increase another form of tension, right? Because now you're touching, you're inviting her to touch you. And she'll likely go for your hand because of the social conversational tension that doesn't feel good, right? And you can even directly inquire about that. You can like just put because you know it feels good. So she takes your hand and let her just pause on it for a second. Still not breaking eye contact. You don't look at your hand when you put it out. You keep your eyes on her. She takes your hand. Let it sit for a moment. And you look at her and just say, it feels good, doesn't it? Right? So now you're talking to her experience, not you're talking to some thought that's in her head. You're now speaking directly to the experience she's having of you. Okay? And doubtful, she'll say, nah, it's awful. Because she would like retract her hand. If it stays there, then you just draw attention to it. All right, so number 3 here is predictable boundaries. This is part of the how. So every order, let me see here. Hey there, kitten. Good to see you. So having predictable boundaries. So every order must have logic and consistency behind it. So she's not going to surrender to chaos. She's surrendering to order. So if your rules change with your moods, she will lose trust. When she knows that your boundaries are consistent, her mind begins to release control. And this is something that I tell guys who are just kind of getting into power dynamics because they get really excited. They're like, oh boy, look at all this fun stuff that I get to practice. And I get that. Like it can be like very, very exciting to do these things. Okay. And, I don't blame them, but you can't bite off more than you can chew. So a lot of guys, they'll start off and they'll make like a huge laundry list of rules. And I'm like, okay, let me see that. Oh, great. You've got 23 rules on here. Have you memorized them? Can you maintain all of these rules? Like constantly be watching for all of them. Because if you slip on these, and let's say she remembers what all of them are, and she realizes, oh, I didn't do that thing, rule number 5. And he didn't say anything. Like, okay, that's weird, And this is something that you cannot do. So when you're creating rules and you're creating structure, you want to make sure that it's something that's the size that you can maintain. Okay, so don't bite off more than you can chew. If you have certain boundaries around things, enforce them regularly. When they come up. Don't bend on Tuesday and then be firm on Wednesday. It doesn't work. So your moods or whatever can't get in the way and you have to remain steady. That's the thing. It's just you being steady, like everywhere. And this is what allows her to feel comfortable with you. Again, I said, this is not manipulation. This is conditioning. All of these things will condition her to open to you. Another one is controlled intensity. So power isn't about how much force you show. It's about how much you withhold. A single word in a quiet voice will bend her faster than shouting ever could. Your restraint becomes proof of your power. So, let's just put this in a simple scenario where, let's say she broke a certain rule. Okay. Let's say every day she's supposed to, call you at 4:30. And one day she just doesn't call you. And you're like, damn, she knows. She's been doing this for weeks. And instead of maybe thinking what I wonder what happened. Let me find out what happened. You fly off the handle. And you go crazy and you punish her harshly. Okay. And if she is your submissive, she's going to take it. She's not going to be like, wait a second, like that's wrong. Like, this was happening or whatever. She'll take it. And then perhaps ask, sir, may I explain myself of why I didn't call you? It was, I wanted to, but I couldn't because this thing happened. Okay. And so that's not going to, and even if there wasn't something, let's just say she forgot. Okay. You flying off the handle and just laying into her, that's actually going to cause her to tighten and recoil. Okay. That's going to bring about tension, like the wrong kind of tension. So this is why it's really important for guys to remain centered and not allow their emotions to get the better of them, because that teaches her, it shows her, they're like, oh, this guy, he's volatile. And if you're volatile, it doesn't train her to be submissive. It trains her to be docile. That's, we talked about that before. The difference between a woman being docile and a woman being submissive. The submission is an offering. She offers herself and says, here I am. I trust you with myself. Being docile is, I'm obedient because I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid of your words. I'm afraid of your energy. I'm afraid of your body, or something along those lines. So that's what you're getting. You're getting an obedient, docile person. And I don't think that's what you really want. So if she, say, screws up, and you're able to see like face to face, just your look alone should be enough for her to drop her gaze to the floor. For you to not even have to say anything, just a look. And that's enough. That should be enough. You should be able to convey, like, to a submissive, okay, one who has submitted to you, you should be able to convey whatever it is that you're wanting to communicate with just a look. That you don't need verbal commands. Not with everything, but there should be some things where just your gaze can tell her all she needs to know. And this is about withholding. So it's not about showing the force, proving to her that you're the big bad leader. No, it's about showing that you can withhold things, that you have restraint within yourself, that you're not guided by impulse, even your anger or your frustration, right? So next one is about, so that's controlled intensity. Number 5 here is conditioning through reward. This is really important. So all these all are. So again, this is conditioning. You're not manipulating. So when she yields, and like truly yields, not the performative stuff, don't just praise her, anchor it. So she, let's say, you're living together and a new thing that you've said, and say, okay, every morning it's your job to make the bed after we get up. And she's like, yes, sir. And she does it with joy, right? It's not like, oh, geez, I have to fucking make the bed now. Like, it's something that makes her feel good to serve. And you don't want to just say, well done. You don't want to just say, that's my good girl. You need to anchor it. And it only anchors itself if she's got like a praise kink. Okay. And that's a very specific thing. So you don't just praise. You need to anchor it with something else, a look, a touch, a phrase, and some sort of ritual that strengthens these things. And her nervous system begins to associate obedience with safety and pleasure. That's how you train her mind to want surrender. All right. So it could be making the bed. It could be doing some sort of training, some sort of sexual training, some sort of endurance training. It could be memorizing a certain something. And if you link this with pleasure, all right, where like, let's say she has like wearable vibrating panties, and And then she like makes the bed or does the thing that, you're trying to have her be consistent about. And then you tell her, you say, come here, right? You don't like say it from across the room. Say, come here, right? And then you can glance down to give her the commands to kneel, unless she just automatically does that. So she approaches you, eyes down, she kneels, and then you turn on the vibe in her panties and you say, good girl, you did a fantastic job making the bed, and you have been for the past couple of weeks. I love that. It's so fucking sexy. And the whole time you're giving her that praise, her panties are vibrating and making her wet, right? You see her squirming and stuff. And you can lay into it if you want. And you say, what's wrong? Are you having trouble sitting still? And so you can start shifting these things. Okay. Stand up. I want to see what's bothering you so much. And then you can put your hand between her legs. Oh, this seems to be the problem. And then you take your hand and you press it further into her. Let me help you with that. And you push it in, right? And then you can go into it again, praising her for being so good. And then you keep doing things like this by linking the like arousal and pleasure to the things she does or the things she says, making the obedience. Again, you're linking these things, you're creating anchors. So at some point you can remove the vibrating panties, so that when because after a while the mind starts expecting, right? The mind starts expecting, oh, like I'm going to get this vibrating sexual pleasure sensation every single time I finish making the bed. And I'm going to hear a phrase, to the point when you do this enough, you can just remove the panties, let her wear regular panties. And then because her body's expecting that to happen, she starts getting wet. Her pussy and her clit start, jumping and flexing all on their own. And so this is the same sort of thing as Pavlov's dog, right? The bell went off, the treat came out, and the dog was drooling. And then after a while, they just stopped giving the dog the treat, and the bell would go off and he'd start drooling. Taking two unrelated things, bells and a hunger response, and linking them. And so now the dog hears a bell and automatically the body is responding before it needed a treat in order to respond. So it's the same sort of thing. So instead of drooling from the mouth, she's drooling from between her legs. Okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, that you can combine certain things that feel good to create an association with something else to make that feel good. And you can link it to even things that are unpleasant, like truly unpleasant. Like this is how girls get to the point where spanking can bring them to an orgasm. Getting whipped can bring them to orgasm because of anchoring. I mean, unless they've got, a particular kink or a particular fetish around pain or a certain type of pain. But aside from fetishes, it can be conditioned. So, and that's really, really fun stuff. So that was ritual and repetition. All right. Oh, sorry. That's conditioning through reward. The next one's ritual and repetition. With ritual, the mind relaxes. So have moments that repeat, like a way you touch her chin when she misbehaves, a certain phrase you use when she obeys perfectly. And like every single time. So like, let's say she misbehaves and say, kitten, come here, kneel. And she kneels, and then you hold her chin with your thumb, like your thumb and your forefinger, like this, like every single time, tilting her face up to you. Like even if it's it happens while you're out, she misbehaves when she's out with you, and you say, we're going to take care of this when we get home. And you bring it to the awareness, and now that's going to be with her the entire time, right? You get in, you take off your shoes, maybe wash your hands. All right, come here. Like, and she'll know. She's waiting for you to deal with it. Like, come here. And she'll likely just go right to her knees. And then every single time, thumb and the finger on the chin. Tilt her face up to yours. And then the same thing can happen with a certain phrase you use when she obeys perfectly. It can be a special phrase. It can be like a special name that you only use when you're giving praise for obedience. It can be a certain touch, like maybe instead of under the chin, she gets a petting of her hair. Like every single time she gets that. All right. And that again can turn into pleasure, but a different kind of pleasure. So when, say, you're watching a movie and then you pet her hair in the same way, okay, this will then bring up those feelings that she felt when she was doing things right. Okay. So ritual, it carves neural grooves and it tells your subconscious that this is a place of comfort, a place of safety. This is home to you. And so the mind, understand, is not fixed. I mean, there's certain things that are fixed, like your hindbrain, like that stuff, that's fixed. But in your prefrontal cortex and all that stuff, where your reasoning is and all this stuff, your beliefs, your perspectives, those neural pathways can be rerouted, like literally, and new synapses can be formed. And this is, how conditioning works. We have a certain relationship to a certain thing, and through conditioning, we create a whole different relationship with that, or we learn to sever our relationship with something. And we get new beliefs, we get new patterns, new habits, and all these things. And that's just carving new pathways in the mind. Okay. So remember, the mind is plastic. There's neuroplasticity. It can be formed and reformed. So don't think of the mind as like a stone pillar. Think of it as a lump of clay that can be manipulated. Manipulated in the way that a sculptor manipulates clay. And then the last one here is the long game. All right. About the hows behind encouraging her submission. Never rush the bend. A rushed mind will resist. A guided mind transforms. Dominance is the art of patience. That's really what it's about. You're not breaking her, you're tuning her. And that's really what happens. And so being patient is an incredible power. It's one of the most fantastic powers that a dominant can express. And it shows that he doesn't mind waiting. He will outwait anything, anyone, because he's not in a rush. He doesn't have a burning desire. There's nothing that's burning within him. Okay. He doesn't have a fire. He has an ember. He's got like a coal, like a red coal, and it's just sit there and he smolders. It reminds me of my Sifu when he was talking about how your mind should be, like how your spirit should move through the world. And he said, be like incense. Don't be on fire and don't be out. Don't be extinguished. You want to smolder in the middle. And like this is kind of like what Buddhism teaches. They teach the middle way. You don't want to have extremes of living, okay? Because that can take you too far. Next thing you know, you're swaying back and forth between these extremes like a tightrope walker who's lost his balance. You want to remain calm and centered in the middle. And that's the most advantageous position to be in, just like in tennis. The tennis player stays in the middle. You don't want to go rushing the ball left and right. You're gonna get smoked on the court. So the same sort of thing is with patience and dominance. You don't want to be taken in any kind of direction, not by anything she does, not anything by she says, not anything that happens in the dynamic, and not even anything that comes up and arises within you. Like as you develop, you come across something about your psyche. That's not going to move you either. You're not going to fall into some depression because you realize a certain something about yourself or fly off into a rage. Like that's not it. That's not being dominant towards yourself. So it's even practicing patience with yourself and maintaining that smoldering incense type mentality, that expression of persona. And this becomes intoxicating to women. Like, in a certain way, it's telling her very much without saying it in direct words, we are not the same at all. We are very, very different the way we're arriving here in this world. And that's the sort of thing that kind of like draws her in, where it's like, oh, this guy is non-reactive. He's very still. He's stable. He's predictable in a certain way, like in how he shows up. Okay. And, again, it's not in a rigid sort of way. It's just stability. He doesn't show me signs that he's unstable. And that's really what you have to think about when it comes to, remaining still. So the man who can bend minds, you must have mastered your own. That's the most key factor here. If you're scattered, if you're impulsive, if you reach for control, if you've got, like terrible habits in the way you see things and criticize stuff and judge stuff, and you're too fixed, it's going to show that you've not mastered your mind. You're too scattered. You're too tight. You're too everything. Okay. You want to smolder in the middle. All right. It's not showy, but it's incredibly impactful. So no technique can substitute self-command. You can't lead her out of her chaos if you're still lost in your own. So your practice begins in solitude. Sit with your breath until your pulse slows under pressure. Discipline your attention until distraction stops ruling you. Learn to remain unreactive when tested, unshaken when denied, unbothered when challenged. A woman doesn't bend to a man's words. She bends to his energy. And that energy is built from self-governance. When you've disciplined your impulses, your energy becomes magnetic. She feels it in her gut, in the marrow of her bones, that this is a man who doesn't need to control to be in control. Does that make sense? He doesn't need control to be in control. He can be in control without controlling anything, just himself. And that's the paradox of power. The more you master yourself, the less you need to prove mastery over anyone else. But that is what draws them in, because she can see that you are masterful of yourself. And she's like, I want that. I want to feel his ability to just calmly put the leash around my neck instead of being like Scorpion and saying, get over here, and making a thing about it. And that could be literal or figurative. The get over here part. It's the grasping, it's the pulling, right? Or even the pushing, like, I don't like that behavior, and being all like reactive to it. Okay. That's not being masterful, being reactive to people's behavior and their words. Like, if someone can throw you off with just their words, you've got some big things to work out about you. Like, that means you can get owned very easily, very, very easily. And people do it online. I've seen people flip out on like panels. I've seen people flip out in comments, and these are grown men. And then in the same breath, they'll call themselves a man, because they're tough. But it's like, yeah, but if you're kind of thrown off your square just by someone speaking, even someone who's not even in front of you, they're just on a screen. Like, how self-governed are you? I don't care. I'll beat his ass. Okay. He still won. He beat you before you even stood up. Don't be that guy. Don't let people own you so easily. All right. So learn to remain unreactive when tested. unshaken when denied, and unbothered when challenged. A woman doesn't bend to a man's words, right? Remember, she bends to his energy. And then there's the spiritual dimension. The bending of her mind isn't about conquest. It's about union. It's about alignment. So when her mind yields, she stops fighting the masculine within her, and you stop chasing the feminine within yourself. That's polarity completing its circuit. Dominance at its highest level is a spiritual calling. It's the masculine principle restoring balance, structure meeting chaos, discipline meeting devotion, consciousness meeting energy. In that exchange, both are transformed. She rediscovers her softness, and you rediscover your purpose. This is why it's necessary, because in a world that tells women to harden and men to soften, someone has to remember the dance. And when done right, it's not opposition, it's restoration. And you, as the man, cannot rely on her to be the one who does this. In a dance, the man leads. He's the one who learns the steps and directs her body. So it's also the steps of the spirit, the steps of the mind, the steps of the emotions, the steps of a dynamic. To expect her to be as prepared as you can be is faulty. She's not going to be, unless you're a follower and you're expecting her to lead, which does happen, but not very common. So if you're that guy, accept it, accept that you're submissive, and allow yourself to be attracted to like tough, strong, assertive, bossy women. And if you are, that's okay. But understand that women who are like that, who are not misandrists, it's going to be very hard indeed to find like a grounded, dominant woman who's not going to take out her disgust with men on you. So be very careful if you're a submissive man. Very careful. Because, female submissives also have to be mindful to not come across like fake doms who are just using BDSM as a mask for their abusive nature. And this happens a lot. There's so many stories that I've heard of submissives being abused by men who are just kind of cosplaying as a dominant because it makes it acceptable. The whole like spanking thing or slapping thing. And it's like, really, he just wants to hurt women, mentally, emotionally, or physically, or all three. So you got to be on point. I just remember it's a dance. It's a dance of energy. And this is something that you, as the leader, as the man, you must be the first one to cultivate it. You create the steps and you invite her to dance with you. Women don't walk up to men and say, "Can I have this dance?" Okay. Not typically. All right. So what happens after her mind bends? Well, once her mind is bent, her obedience becomes effortless. It becomes almost thoughtless. You no longer need to command because she anticipates. You no longer have to correct because she's aligned. Her submission becomes intuitive because it's no longer about compliance. It's about belonging. Her eyes will search for your approval like a compass finding north. Her breath will synchronize with yours without words. And that's when you'll understand bending her mind was never about control. It was about returning her to harmony. And in that harmony, your leadership becomes sacred. So remember, her mind bends before her body. And also remember that if the end goal is harmony, she needs to have something solid in order to harmonize with. And if it's just your sexual impulses, that's a little short. Like, it doesn't really take her very deep. It doesn't take her very long. It doesn't extend forward into time. It's very fleeting. And this is the problem that guys have, is that their leadership often stems from their sexuality. That's a very poor way to lead. That's not going to bring about growth in someone. That's not going to bring about someone like going past their limitations. Okay. And that's what that's about. Man, I got like some stuff in my eyes. Sorry, my eyes are red. I don't smoke weed, I promise. My eyes are a little bloodshot. I washed my face before the stream and got soap in my eyes. Always seem to do that. But anyways, I need to get like the tear-free soap for babies. He said, grown man, I'm still getting soap in my eyes. So yeah, that's more or less about the having her body follow, right? And I know like this seems like it's heavy, okay? And I can understand that, like from the onset, like looking at this, all that stuff that I explained, and thinking, boy, that sounds really heavy. That sounds pretty thick, and a lot that I have to think about and do and create. And yeah, it is. It is. I'm not going to lie. But the thing is that when you get into it, it becomes so interesting, especially when you start learning to control your impulses, like for your emotions and your sexual drives. This stuff becomes really interesting when you start seeing its effects and you start seeing shifts in her behavior. That's when it becomes really cool. And you're like, holy shit, like, Justin wasn't just talking nonsense. This is actually occurring in real time. And I can see her behavior shifting. Like it's an incredible thing to see transition in another person due to what you are creating, due to your mindset and your presence and your ability to have restraint. Okay. It's really powerful. Where like restraint is oh my gosh, like you can do so much with that if you're calmly restrained, if you withhold just without any resistance within yourself. Okay. Where the sexual impulse like wants to come out and you're like, no, 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 and you're like fighting it. Okay. It's more like a trained dog who's on a leash and you say sit, and it sits. Like that's really how you want your sexual impulses to be tamed. All right. Like a very obedient dog. Not something that's like pacing and like ready to lunge. Okay. Because that makes people uncomfortable, especially women. Okay. And part of her is going to want you to do that because truthfully, there is an aspect of them. And this is part of the split mind, which I'll be putting into the tutorials about the woman's split mind. And about the nice, good little girl inside who just wants to be held and protected and cherished and all that stuff. And then there's like, the greedy whore and that side who just wants to consume and feel and experience and just feel used and consumed by the beast of desire. And this is that split. All right. And so yes, she does have the desire, but it's even more powerful when you're saying, yeah, he's here and he's going to come out when I say he's coming out, not because you're squirming and mewing like a cat in heat, with your rear end up in the air and you're spreading yourself and saying, please daddy, please fuck me, please fuck me. And like, why should I? Go make me a sandwich. Stop embarrassing yourself. And like, wait, come here, and you start playing with her before she gets up to leave. All right. And just driving more of that desire for her wanting you to just tear her apart. Okay. And you're like, make it good. I'll think about it. And you can just keep, it gives you so much flexibility when you have the power of restraint, when you can withhold that dog. Right. And then at the right time, you're like, okay, go. And you're like, snap the little hook off its leash, and it's like bang, and it goes out. And that's the power of being able to just control everything. And it just shows her, like, in so many levels, it shows her many different things. But one of them is like, I don't really have much sway over him. Like, my strongest calling card that I know I have over so many guys, all I got to do is just show them my tits. All I got to do is just bend over. All I got to do is wear something tight. All I got to do is say, you want to come to my place? Or anything like that. They've been shown for years, since they were young enough to recognize it, which might start as early as like 12 years old. And when men start like kind of looking at them different, right? Boys start looking at them different, and they realize, holy shit, I've got power out here. And then they start experimenting and like, wow, I really didn't do anything. Like, why are these guys so nice to me? Why is Billy buying me lunch? Why did so-and-so give me flowers? I didn't do anything. I was just like generally nice. And thinking, oh, maybe it's my clothes, And so there's this learned understanding of men that they're just easily controlled, easily influenced and manipulated. And some truly go that path of manipulation and try to extract things from guys, and that's shitty. It happens. But, there's shitty people in the world. It is what it is. But then they come across someone like myself, and they're like, okay, I know he's a sexual being. I can feel it off of him, but he's not coming at me the way other men have. And so it's a bit confusing. Like, wait, does he like me? Is he interested in me? Does he want me? And so that starts like this self-doubt sort of circle, which is already there, but it starts like spinning it up, right? And then you can manage that by bringing in some more of your sexual interest, but without actually taking her, which will just increase the tension of wanting to be taken. And she's like, oh, okay, so he is very attracted to me. He does find me sexually appealing. He does approve of me, but he's still like very much in control of himself. And that becomes like this bittersweet, sexy, but still disappointing thing that goes on. And you can drag this out and change its shape and look as much as you want. Okay. And you can let that leash loose whenever you want. And you can put it back on its leash whenever you want. Where you can be in the throes of certain something, and there's like a fever pitch. And, let's say, she has earned herself an orgasm. She wants more. She wants to play more. She wants to feel more, taste more, do more, whatever. And you go, we're done for today. Put your robe on. It's time to make some tea and clean up. And she'd be like, what? Like, how can he just switch? And it's just an example of like flexing your power, not necessarily over her, but over yourself. And saying, I can stop this. I can stop anything at a blink of an eye, completely without effort. Like it's nothing. And that drives certain feelings in there, because it almost says you're nothing. But obviously she is something, right? Because she's there. You're not saying get the fuck out. You know what I mean? And it's just confusion, but not in a terrible way. And it's very, very powerful stuff when you can show that you have great control over yourself and that she has no power or influence over you, especially sexually. And she's like, fuck, like my best fucking card does nothing to this man. I can't make him lose control. Sometimes that'll make them try harder to make you lose control, showing up sexier, flirting with you, this, that, and the other. You know, and if I experience that, it'll be, you know, a swift, quick slap. Like, I see what you're up to. Naughty little shit. I see what you're up to. You're not going to win. Right? Because sex, as that one guy said, who the fuck was that? It's always often attributed to Oscar Wilde, but it's not. It was a playwright, but it's about sex, is about power. Okay, it's usually no. Oh, everything in the world is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. And it's often attributed to Oscar Wilde, but it was someone else. Fucking GPT. I know I read this somewhere. It was a playwright or a writer or something like that, but it wasn't Oscar Wilde. But that's what it is. It's using these opportunities to show her that you're paying attention and you can see where the power lies, and she has none. And it's this bittersweet thing. It's like, man, that's fucking sexy, but like at the same time, it shows like I'm not, like, my ego, right? It shows my ego that I'm not as special as I thought I was. You know, after years and years of guys being like, you're so special. Your titties are amazing. Your ass is amazing. Your face is amazing. I love you, right? I want you to be mine. And you're like, she's like, no, I don't want to be owned by you. I want to be owned by the guy who doesn't want to own anything. You girls are so weird. Oh, thank you, James. Yes, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Like, I'm a little bit paranoid that it's going to happen again. But thank you. But yeah, it's, you know, girls are weird. They have all this like very interesting contradictory stuff about their nature. You know, this is why you can't listen to those crazy red pill guys, because they think they've got it all figured out. Like, this is female nature. You know, they're so deceptive. You know, they never take accountability. You know, like a little moon here, she takes accountability all the time. And it's because, well, to her credit, she has the ability to, right? She's not afraid of taking accountability. But at the same time, I think that if I never said anything, and from the jump, that I was the type of person to catch one's behavior and draw attention to it and say, you need to fix this, then I think that the reaction for her own accountability would subside a little bit. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but I think that's what would happen. But I'm the type of person to draw attention to fault and bring it out. And it could be simple things, grammar, like, you know, speaking in clear sentences. This is important to me. Saying thank you, general manners, and proper, like, conducting oneself properly. Like, I think this is important. I mean, for anybody. So it's like, when I see it for somebody who's under me, of course I'm going to point it out. Okay. But they're like, oh man, women are never accountable. It's like, yeah, no, they're never accountable to you. And losers like you, that's what they're not accountable towards. They're not going to be accountable to somebody that they don't respect. Why would they? Like, are you accountable to somebody that you don't respect? No, you could give a fuck what they think. But if you've ever had somebody in your life that you truly respect, you have very high regard for them, then of course you're going to take accountability. Like if you know that you fucked up with something with regard to them, whether it's by speech or behavior or something situational, you're going to feel bad. You're going to want it. You're going to be compelled to say something to them and say, hey man, you know, I fucked up. I'm really sorry about that. Okay. So that's really how it works. So respect must be in there. And this is, you know, I think red pill guys have come around to this, but they're still kind of butthurt about it, that respect should be number one. It should be top tier, the topmost thing, because without that, you really don't have anything else. You could be fucking, but think about it. She's fucking a guy that she doesn't respect. How good could the sex possibly be? If she doesn't even say thank you. Or she doesn't have like just a spirit of gratitude. You know, that's got to be awful. But I think all guys have experienced that at some point in life. I certainly have. But it was long before, like I felt there was something wrong, something missing, but I really didn't know what it was. And so really my fault was my ignorance. But I knew something was off. Something wasn't complete. Okay. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to find it. You know, it's hard to find something that you don't know. And so it eventually came to me, and I was like, oh, sex should have a sense of gratitude around it. And it was when I was shifting into having a higher regard for myself, understanding that I have great influence. Like once I started being able to, like, with boundaries within the external as well as boundaries that I have inside my own mind and my spirit, like towards the women that were in my life, like I was choosing to prevent them from affecting me, right? Affecting my decisions, affecting my emotions, affecting the way I think. And that's when it started. And then it strengthening and encouraging my own self-worth, my own self-respect at the same time. Like they kind of work in tandem at the same time. And that's when I started coming to the truth of the matter, which is like, yes, they're beautiful, they're amazing creatures, love women, but I realized that I have a great impact on them. And even when I don't know what I'm doing, you know, like there's tons of guys who don't know what they're doing, and women are just like driven to be with them, to understand them, to listen to them, to want to be with the guy, and like almost to like an obsessive nature. Okay. And, you know, but they don't know how to lead that. They don't know how to harness that energy and turn it into something good. Right. They'll just kind of let it fly all over the place, and they don't manage it. And then she just goes nuts. And this is when like stalking begins, you know, like that's one of the differences, you know, between, you know, just pure excitement and enthusiasm and obsession. Like obsession has an unhealthy angle to it. It wants to consume it. Like, and this is what drives some girls to like stalk certain guys, you know, and they'll start like trying to steal things from them that they won't notice. Then they have like a little treasure box of like all of his little things. Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be weird. James, I remember you telling me that those red pill guys don't have the full picture. The problem is that they think they do, and they become very reactive and defensive. Yeah. Well, when you come to a conclusion that you say, I know, then you're already at fault. That's the thing. Because there's no way, no person that can see all angles, that can see all truths. Okay. We're not omniscient beings. Okay. And so that's the problem, is that they're positing a position. They say, I know. I know girls are like this. And it's like, okay, well, how many women have you actually interacted with? And like, well, I don't have to. I read it in this book. And there's studies that show that this, and this occur. And it's like, all right, well, that's fine. But you know, just understand that like your misery has nothing to do with girls, but they'll never figure that out. Well, I can't say never, but it's going to be a far cry to, or a shot in the dark for them to really figure that out. That they realize, fuck, like all the stress, the pain, anxiety, anger, all that stuff is because of me. And so here's another thing. When we're talking about trust and mastering the self, if you're not doing it, you can't expect her to. So if you want her to take accountability, you have to take accountability. Like, first of all, to yourself. You have to take accountability to yourself. You have to look at your actions and your words and the things that were just not correct, that were not correct. And you say, you know what? That was fucking wrong. I shouldn't have done it that way, or I shouldn't have done that at all. And here I am trying to cover things up so I don't look bad, right? Which is a direct threat to your ego, which is part of the ego's function is to present your sense of self to yourself, and to other people. And you're like, this is who I believe I am. And it's often in a certain light that keeps us protected. And anything, either situationally or that a guy or another person does that threatens that identity, that's when it gets shored up. Okay. Often with anger, defensiveness, and so on, because it challenges, what we're thinking about ourselves. And this is dangerous. This is truly dangerous. And then they're saying, I want a woman to not do that when I can't do it even in myself. And so when you can do it in yourself, like to yourself and to situations that say you and the woman are involved in, and you have the ability to not hide behind your ego and say, hey, you know what? That thing that happened or the thing that I said, that shouldn't have happened. I apologize. It won't happen in the future. And when you say that, it can't happen in the future. You have to stick to your word. So you're choosing to change, like make a change within yourself right then and there with conviction. And then this starts teaching her through example that it's safe for her to be accountable. Like, especially if you don't, like if you bring up the situation where you fucked up, and especially if you don't flow into your emotions with guilt or sorrow or anger or whatever. Okay. Because that as well is it's just an act of the ego. It's trying to shift the goalposts. And you'll see this. I've seen this a lot. And the guy will shift into being sad about what he's done or said, which then causes her to have emotional reaction to that. And it's either going to be like disgust, or it's going to be like, oh, it's okay, right? And try to soothe his sorrow. And now the attention is on the wrong fucking thing. So you can't have any reaction about your own accountability. You have to be able to just plainly state it objectively as a truth, and then just vow not to do it anymore. Don't say like, I'm going to try to remember. I'm going to try to do this thing. Because whenever we say try as a man, that gives us elbow room to fail. You're going to get up at 5 o'clock every day. I'm going to try. And then you can say, well, at least I tried. Either you do it or you don't fucking do it. That's what it is. This is why I make mention of, like the samurai mindset. There's no like half draw of the blade. It's either being drawn and being used, or it stays sheathed. There's no in between. There is no try. Man, I wish Yoda never said that, because it's such a great thing. and you can't repeat it without sounding campy. But it's the fucking truth. There's either action or inaction. There's no trying of action. That's it. Like either the lightning strikes or it doesn't strike. It doesn't like almost strike. There's no like a half bolt of lightning or a bolt of lightning that like has an identity crisis. It just strikes or it doesn't. That's it. Black and white, yin yang, on off, binary. You can't look at things and go, well, it depends. I don't know. Like it depends. Like if I like halfway draw my blade, I don't know. No, if you flick that thumb and it begins its journey off the scabbard, it's fucking coming out. And that's the end of it. And this is how you should be, dealing with yourself. This is how you should be dealing with your conviction and being accountable, facing your bullshit. Right? It's when the ego comes in and tries to preserve what you've had this whole time. This is just you working on your ego again, because it's the sadness and the reaction and all that bullshit. That's just trying to keep you in the same place and not deal with a bit of the pain involved in being accountable. But you're a man, you should be stronger than this, more resilient than this. It says a lot if you're not resilient against the discomfort that your ego can face. That says a lot about your spine, and that you just have a very flexible spine. It's not made of bone, it's made of cartilage. You're too flexible, right? Your balls have not dropped. They're still up in your stomach. But these are very, very powerful things that speaks to her in a language that's beyond words. But they're incredibly impactful. And you don't have to explain shit. Like it's just evident. These things are evident. And that evident stuff, this is what encourages her. This is what starts bending her mind to the point where she becomes very comfortable. She feels safe to do the same things. And the more she opens, the more vulnerable she becomes. It's just inviting your guidance, inviting to shape her will, shape her arousal, shape her perspectives. As long as it feels safe, pretty much everything can be reshaped. But in order to be safe, it's got to be something that is very well known. The unknown feels unsafe. That's a very natural thing. If I, have like a little house, little bungalow, no lights on inside, and it's just dark. It's like pitch black. And I open the door and I say, "You're welcome to go inside." You'd be like looking for the light, feeling around just past the door jamb, looking for the light switch. I'm like, no, there's no lights in there. Go on in. You'd be very uncertain. You might step through, you might not. But part of you is going to be uncomfortable with the unknown that's in that room. You hear something moving around in there, and you're like, oh, I don't want to go in. Could be a mouse, could be a vampire, I don't know. So the unknown is hard to follow. But when you make things clear, when you illuminate things for her to see, without over explaining yourself, but more so in your presence, in the example of your presence. And that's what the beginning is. It allows her to kind of rest into that and go, especially if it's showing up consistently. And she's able to say, okay, this is, I'm guessing, like I'm leaning more and more towards the idea that this guy is for real, that he is something reliable, like his character, his spirit, his core is something that is reliable. I might be interested in leaning on this, flowing into this. So you really, really have to cultivate this within yourself. Because I know you guys want to get to the fun shit. I know you want to play around with rope like with these young ladies here. And then when she takes it off, she's got all these nice red marks all over her body. That's all fun stuff. It's great. Absolutely fantastic. And to play and have fun. And you can play without doing what I'm talking about. But just don't mistake that for submission. It's not submission. She's just playing along, and that's okay. That's what'll happen in, say, like with play partners or a sex club or something along those lines. At a dungeon, these things happen all the time, but don't assume that there is a deep emotional submission involved. Just because she's allowing you to tie her up, because she's allowing you to degrade her or praise her or use other areas of her body. She's just allowing that to happen. But submission, right? Surrender is both a reaction and a choice. It's like the dog drooling, but it's also a conscious decision of saying, okay, I like this guy. I see myself following him. I like how he feels to me. And the way he feels to me is showing up the same every day. I was talking to, actually I had a call today with one of my younger guys. And he used to be of the mindset of just wanting lots of different women. And that's okay if guys want that. It's totally fine. It becomes not fine when you are seeking depth from your choices that are not depth capable. And you have to accept your choices as they are. So if you want to just skip around and have different women each week, you can. That's perfectly fine. But don't expect any sort of depth from them. And so what started transitioning for him, which is something I went through the same transition, and he's coming to that now, where he's realizing that that depth is greater than breadth. He wants to go deep. He doesn't want to go wide. So he's with just one woman at this point, and he's realizing how interesting it's getting by going deeper and deeper and deeper. And it seems like it's bottomless. That's what he's discovering. And he's like, wow, this is fucking cool shit. And I'm like, yeah, like it's a different game altogether when the woman decides that she wants to submit herself to you. And we're talking like all the things, not just her body. And you feel that shift, like that shift in barometric pressure, kind of like when you go in like a very, very high elevator where you're driving into the mountains, and you can feel the pressure difference in your body. Sometimes your ears pop. And it's like that. You can feel these shifts, and you don't get it with one night stands happening, a couple times a week. It's just, you don't. But if there's, I know people who are like that, where they're just like, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They're like, I don't care. I don't have the time. I don't have the interest. I just want to have sex. And that's totally fine. I think it's perfectly fine, especially if you have worked out your emotional attachments to sex. Because with a lot of guys, they'll say that they're having sex just for the physical pleasure of it, but they're not. Most of the time, it's due to emotional desires. emotional needs that often are not met by the self. So they use the sex in order to get those fulfilled. And that's very average. That's a very, very common way of going about things. Very common relationship to sex. It's not purely physical, but they'll say it is. And then most of the time, these same guys, they get wrapped up in one girl eventually. It's like, hey, I thought this was all purely physical. What are you getting so wrapped up in here for? Why does she have this influence over you? I thought it was just about rubbing body parts. No? It's like, well, she's different. I didn't expect her. No, it's because something within you, beyond your conscious thought, was seeking this. It was seeking the chance to love and be needy. Okay? And it's like, I'm a firm believer that the things that you need to experience eventually will come to light. Situations will arise that will cause you to face yourself, and you get like a slim opportunity to deal with that. And so in a case like that, it's a symbol that you should be looking at your ego. You should be looking at your emotional attachments to these things, where they come from and why they're there. But a lot of guys miss that opportunity. They don't go and, when these emotional impulses come up, they just run with them. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in love, right? And, because I'm also a firm believer that men don't fall in love. They don't get that, that strong pull, that strong impulse. It's not like that. And the reason being is that, men with a capital M have a greater love for themselves than they do for anyone else. And so this is what allows them to keep their cup full. And when their cup is full, and it comes from the self, that means it's also bottomless. You can always replenish every single day. And what that means is that you're free to love as much as you want in any way you want, because you're never going to run dry. It's not like you have a finite love account, like love bank account that, you can overdraft. It's not like that. It's just a wellspring that's constantly replenishing itself. That's how your self-love should be. That's how your self-respect should be. Such that when you choose to give it to somebody else, it doesn't detract from you. It doesn't remove anything from you. And that's because it's forming a different thing. Like the whole setup is different. The usual way, like for guys, when it comes to loving a woman, is that there's attachments. There's great attachments. And it springs forth their codependency. And this is really, this is, like I said about the opportunities, if you're self-aware enough to realize this, then that reaction that the guy is having, where he's, head over heels, that sort of thing. And in comes his fears and things like that. It's like, oh, what if I lose her? What if this happens? What if that happens? Those are all opportunities for you to investigate the self and learn more self-mastery. But, let's face it. Most guys, they just get too embroiled. They lose control. They become obsessive themselves, right? And they can't contain it. It's very difficult for them to contain it. And it becomes destructive to them as well as the people around them. This is not leadership. Getting swept up in something is not leadership. Men don't fall into things. They choose things. Salute to Steve. He always says, I don't fall in love. I fall into respect. And I know he's using the word fall to have a play on words, that sort of thing. And I do know that he doesn't mean that he falls into respect literally, right? He's just a play on words. What we do is we inspire respect. We cultivate respect. We don't demand it or command it. It's just something that happens due to you leading by example with your own self-respect. Boundaries that are not formed by emotion. But I don't want you to do this because it'll hurt my feelings. Right? And often that's a too real thing to say. So you'll say, I don't want you to do these things because it's disrespectful. But the truth of the matter is it just hurts your feelings. I mean, this might fly over you guys' heads, but no one can actually disrespect you. They can only disrespect the structures that you've built. Because disrespect is a defiance of order. It's a defiance of a structure of some kind, either be it physical or intangible. They can't disrespect you per se because you're not a structure. So it's usually what guys are mistaking for that is just hurt feelings. That's it. And you can still speak on that and not sound like a fucking moron. You can be upset and recognize damn, what that person said hurt my feelings. But you don't have to come to them and say, hey, you really hurt my feelings. Right? It can be done in a very calm manner. That's straightforward, objective, and but still letting them know that they fucked up. Okay. But in order to do that, you actually have to have some emotional control and some amount, right? Because if you had good emotional control, your feelings wouldn't have been hurt in the first place. So if you're out here, you get offended, you get hurt easily, you get angered easily, frustrated easily. This just shows that your cup is not full. You're highly reactive, and you might have a thing about playing the victim card. Which is manipulation. It's a means to get people to shift their behavior by way of guilt. And this is no good. This is not how men operate. Right? They operate on order. They operate on principles. They operate on codes. This is what's really important. And if you guys can hear my dog, I have this 80-pound pit bull, and he's overweight. He basically looks like a spring roll with legs. Dogs, if you look at their body from the side, you've got the head, and then the rib cage, and it kind of sticks out underneath them. And then their abdomen usually curls upward, right? And they've got a nice tight waist. His rib cage and where the gut is, where it should curl inwards, it's just straight across. So when he's lying down on his side and you look down at him, he just looks like a big spring roll with legs. It's really funny. Yeah, that would be a funny Halloween costume for him. Dress him up like a spring roll. Put big fake pieces of shrimp next to him. Wrapped, around the clear noodle wrap or whatever it's called. Dino Watkins, you never heard a dog snore? Yeah. I think it's because he's overweight. But anyways, I hope this stuff is making sense to you. I hope it's working out for you, because I know a lot of guys, they want to lead, they want to be in that position. and just accept the fact that there's a learning curve. Like it's very difficult, not impossible, but it's very difficult to sort this out on your own. It's challenging, okay? And it takes time. It really does take time. So if you want to cut down on your time and your efforts, get in touch with me. Okay? I do this for a living. And there is a process, but it's not insurmountable. It can be taken up if you have the ability to just put your nose to the grindstone and just do what's necessary. Ludwig, my pit's 5 years old. Yep, he was actually an adoption. Yep, 80 pounds and 5 years old. So like he's still growing, but I feel like his body's just growing closer to the ground. Everything's the same. You know, he's growing like thicker, but just in the middle. His legs are going to be the same. He's a funny guy. But yeah, he's a big dummy. So, but yeah, I'm hoping that this was helpful for you guys. We're coming close to the top of the hour, and I know it's even difficult to like ask questions about these topics because it's like, well, what do you ask? But that's just the way it goes. Like, like sometimes there are no questions, and because it's not confusing stuff. You just need to get to work. You just need to start putting some attention on yourself in the right way, and not let your ego, take you down, various paths that are, unproductive or unproductive. That take you away from the goal, take you further away from your core. Now that's why you can't fall prey to like I feel so bad for not being the way I should be, right? Or not handling that situation the way I should have. You should prevent yourself from feeling bad about these things, right? There's no rule that says you have to feel guilty when you're taking accountability. It's just plain objective fact, right? Like when the cop pulls you over for speeding, it doesn't matter if you feel bad about it or not, right? You disrespected the law, and there's a consequence for that. Whether you feel bad about it or not is irrelevant. The cop just doesn't want you to speed anymore. And I take the same lessons into my dynamics. Like apologies are cool and all, but I want to see a change of behavior. I kind of like, yes, I'm glad you're sorry, but I don't really care that you're sorry, because it doesn't change anything. Like, the girl feeling bad, it like the structure is still looking to be righted. So if there's like a part of the structure that's been bent due to misbehaving, due to laziness, or due to being forgetful, or what have you, like whether you feel bad about it doesn't matter really, because I'm just looking for that part of the structure to be straightened again. That's it. That's all that's necessary. It's like, well, if you want to feel bad, you want to cry, okay, then bend yourself over my knee. We can make that happen. But oftentimes they want that to happen, and it'll feel good and make their pussy wet. And then you've got this whole other thing on your hands. The message did not work its way through. So yeah, be very aware if you come across someone who has a strong masochistic streak, because you can't really punish them physically. If they're a physical masochist, if they're a mental masochist as well, like that means, it's like getting blackmailed. it makes them wet. So you can't really jump into minds like that either. So just be very careful if you have yourself a masochist on your hands. I think my little moon is a bit masochistic, but that's okay because I'm a little sadistic. Helps to have the right puzzle pieces. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to pull this to a close, and I hope this was informative for you. And I'm so glad that the audio has been right on point and pleasant for your ears and not muffled or weird. And yeah, so that's that. Have yourselves a good week. All right. Keep your head about you. And we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.